Hello, we're back at the Apidays interface for the last segment of the day, where we'll be talking about, let's say, who are the next users of APIs, right? Who are the users we don't expect, maybe as a next generation of users, API and SaaS, and we will talk about all these topics. But we will try to determine, what are the weak signals, like the trends who are we maybe not following directly, but like that's actually coming. So we will talk about the no-code mindset and the SaaS API mindset with Francis Lalonde, CEO of Alegria.tech. So Francis,
Hello.
Nice to have you at the APIs interface. So I invite you, to share your slide. It's perfect. And yes, let's dive into what you have for us and continue the discussion.
Yes, great. Thanks. Nice to meet you all here. It's a pleasure for me to present here today at the Apidays for the 10th anniversary. So my name is Francis Lalonde. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Alegria Group. I'm worked for 25 years now in the digital industry. I'm the former founder and CEO of Sarenza.com, which is in Europe a copycat of Zappos. So my background is more B2C, e-commerce, and those kind of things. I will speak later about Alegria, what we are doing here, but just a short introduction, perhaps in just a couple of slides about what is no-code today and why everyone speaks about no-codes those days. Perhaps just two very important figures to begin, 3 important figures. The first one is a huge demand on digital applications, 5 million applications to create by 2025. It means not multiplied by 2 or 5 or 10, it's multiplied by 100 compared to the last decade. It's more applications to create than all time long in the software industry. So it's just huge, large demand, and specifically because of SMBs, which are going to automatize, digitalize a lot of part of their businesses. The second figure is the number of people who are developers, coders. Only 0.3% of the worldwide population knows how to code today. So it's very, very small amount of persons. And moreover, if you are looking at the repartition of the women and men in this population, you have only 15% of women. So all those persons have really the power to decide what kind of projects can emerge in the digital industry and which are the ones who are never going to live. It's a real problem. If you compare with the number of people who knows how to read or to write, it's 86% of the worldwide population who knows how to read, to count, to write. 0.3% is the number of people who knew how to read and to write 500 years ago. So we are in kind of this period in the digital years. It's really crazy. How many people are really know how to code today. So the lack of developers is very high. 1.4 million of software developers are missing in the USA, and it's not going to decrease. In Europe, it's pretty much the same figures. So the no-code is the only solution to try to solve this. It takes 3 to 5 years to train a good developer. It's very hard to find people who want to become a developer, even if the salaries are very high. And here in France, for instance, all the schools are fighting to find students to work and to become developers. So this problem is going to continue to grow. Again, the only solution we have on the table to try to reduce the lack of developers is really the no-code. And this is the reason why all the no-code tools raised so much money last year, more than $5 billion US invested in no-code tools last year. So the market is just going to rise also very fast. And what we are trying to do here at Allegria is really to try to find solution at what Yuelu, the founder of Airtable, said in September 2020. $500 million of apps are about to be created. We need more software builders, not just users. Software builders is another word to say a no-code maker. This is the way you are the name you are giving to those persons. It's really a new job. Last year we had only 100% working at a full time as a pro no-code maker in France. It's 1,000 this year, and it's going to be probably 100,000 in the next 3 or 4 years. So this revolution is really on this way. And Allegria Group was founded 1.5 years ago, and we intend to become the no-code leader, the leader in no-code technologies in the next 2 or 3 years. We are already the leader in Europe, and what we are trying to create is a community of pro no-code makers, which would be able to create 100,000 apps per year. So it's huge. It needs to totally change the way companies are working on software development. Our mission, just in a short terms, is really to try to transform organization by making software accessible to all through no-code, and accessible to all is very important because, as you know, citizen developers is a very important trend. What we are trying to do is to give keys to people in the company to help them to create their own tools. Our conviction here at Allegria is that it's really the time to replace Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, the Microsoft Office tool, which are 30 years old now, into the no-code tools, because they are the tools that the people need in the companies now to deliver value expected in a world where internet is everywhere. So to do this, we have 2 solutions. The first one, as I said previously, is really to create the largest pro no-code makers community in the world. And the second thing is to train professional makers, because what we understood last year is that we are creating another problem, and the new problem is the lack of pro no-code makers, the same difficulties that we could have with the developers. The good news is that we can train a pro no-code makers in 6 to 12 months compared to 3 to 5 years for a developer. And those guys can become pro no-code makers without any technical background, and they can produce from 70 to 80% of what a developer can do in a company. If we think about creating tools for business mainly, which is what the companies are looking for today. So let's speak about API. This is the idea of this meeting. What we noticed at Allegria is that we have a lot of tools today, a lot of new softwares. 1, 2, 3 new no-code tools are launched on Product Hunt on every day now. So we have more than 750 no-code tools on our catalog at Allegria. And mainly, why those tools are very interesting, because they have an open API or REST API in most of the times. And today we cannot recommend a tool to our customer if this tool is not open to be integrated in a large panel of other softwares to create a solution. If you are looking at all the software editors here in France, SaaS software editors, most of them don't have any API yet. For instance, if you are looking at Payfit, if you are looking at Alan or those kind of companies, they are very large companies here in France, but they are just thinking about how to connect their tools with other tools. Until now, most of the time, they are hard coding a connection with a partner, which is very long and very complicated. And you can really do this totally differently today using no-code. So what we are doing now and what is important to understand in a world where also, as you know, um, it's very important to be integrated in an ecosystem of tools. We are trying to address these issues with three offers now. It's like a 360 degrees offer for SaaS software tools. So first thing is to design a strategy. API first is very important today. Headless also is very important. So you need to define a strategy for your SaaS tool. The team is going to work on this, the process, the business model, how you are going to earn more money with your API, your REST API, security for sure, scalability, the tech tools. For instance, we are working with Conto, which is a fintech here in France, creating today all their connectors, their workflow connectors with our no-code makers. So it's in production. They have more than 400,000 customers, and all the connectors which are provided in the library of Conto are produced in the code today. But to be able to do this, first you need a strategy. The second part is to create those connectors with your tech team. The idea is really to go faster on the creation of workflows or on the connectors library you could need on your business. The idea for sure, most of the time, is to create with us 80% of the most demanding tools to connect with your SaaS. But we can also do bespoke for some customers. And this is the third part of our proposition to the SaaS editors, is really to help them to manage their API business. It could be like a customer service for the REST API for your customers. When you have a customer, we send a request for a connection with dedicated tools. And if you don't have done it yet, we could develop it with our no-code tools very fast in a very interesting cost for them. And for sure, it's creating a lot of loyalty. There's a study which was done, I guess, by Typeform, which said that when they open their REST API, they increased their sticky for 20%, between 15 to 20%. So it's very, very important to have this, because as you can guess, when your tool is connected to other tools in a tech environment at your customer, it's definitely more difficult to replace it by another tool because you will have to recreate all the connections. So it's very important to have it and to use it. So if you are focusing on integrating a REST API for your customers, it's something which is really not easy to do. Your customers need to have the specific tools. Perhaps they go to Zapier, perhaps they go to Make or some other tools. They need to understand all your API documentation, which is not easy. Again, it will depend on the type of customers you can have, but most of the time it's very difficult for them to understand what is an API, what is a JSON, how to collect data, the get and the put commands. All those kind of things are not easy to understand. And also, you need to have something which is going to work all time long. As you know, when you are using Zapier or Make, it can happen that the connection fell down, so you need to fix it. You need also to maintain the connections, because you can have some new needs, new data that needs an update on the connections. And so this is also something which could be very difficult to do by your customers. So we are trying to really fill a gap between the SaaS tools customer service. When you receive a demand at your customer service, guys, do you have a connector for these tools? Most of the time you send a Zapier video to help them how to do this, but it's not not that simple most of the time. For your official integrators, most of the time they are working with large companies for very high price and for complex integrations. So that's great, but it's not the good answer for all of your customers. And at the end, if an integrator is too expensive for your customers, the customer can try to do it by himself. But if in his company he doesn't have any tech guy, it could be very complicated for him even to use Zapier or Make, as I said before. So Alegria is here to fill this gap and to be a dedicated solution for the customer service about API connections for the companies who are API first. So what we are doing is very easy for this part of our business model. We are connecting with you, which is also very important, is to try to industrialize the connection with your customer service. So your customer service, when they have a demand on this, they can directly send it to us. You can share the request through this thing, and also what is very important is to have on those kind of services security, because it's not possible to exchange the API keys on an email or on a Slack conversation. So what we are trying to do with the software editors we are working with is to try to have a direct connection with your API and to hide all the API numbers, so you cannot have breach in your in the security for you and for the customers. So this is the ideal way of doing the things. It's not always possible, but this is the way it should have been done. And then we are creating the connection with your tool and the tool your customers want to be created. So it's a very interesting business model because it's free for you. You will earn a lot of royalty from your customers by sharing these kind of things. It's really a modern way of creating more business with your REST API. For the customers who are asking for this connection, it's a fixed price depending on the work we have to do, from 100 euro to 1K. So it's very cheap. You can go very fast on doing those kind of connections. And after that, we have a subscription model from 5 to 10 euros per month per automation that help us to maintain, to update it, and also to try to make it up always. If it's gone down, we are working on this to fix the problems if problems appear on this kind of things. So this is just an example of what we can do today with Alegria and REST API. Just a few words about the founders, but it's not very important for us today. And just a few words also about companies we are working for. So it's a very wide range of companies, from startups to large companies today. So this is what I wanted to share with you on the no-code and REST API. And if you have any questions, I would be very happy to chat with you about this.
Yes, thank you very much, Francis. So let's say a quick question that we have. So someone who build no code is it a coder, a no coder? Like how do you call it?
We call it a maker, a pro no-code maker. You have three kind of personas. You have the citizen makers, the guys who are going to have a look at some tutos online and to use Airtable to manage his wine library, for instance, like I was done at the first time when I met Airtable 5 years ago. You have the no-code ops. The no-code ops are the guys who are working in a company doing something and using tools to do his mission in the company. But he's not a pro no-code maker. He's going to be trained to use Notion, Bubble, Shopify, or whatever tool, and he's going to use it on an everyday basis in his company. And you have the pro no-code makers, the guys who are working with on an everyday basis in our community. Those guys earn their money by selling their time to create solutions with no-code tools.
Okay, so yeah, different names. I've heard also the name citizen developers sometimes.
Exactly. It's something which is very used by Microsoft, for instance, and some other low-code tools like Mendix, Petitblocks, and some others. So it's pretty much the same, but we are trying really to make a differentiation between all those kind of personas because it's definitely different. But in a certain way, all the persons who are going to use no-code tools could be citizen developers.
So a question about the shadow IT. It's true that a lot of SaaS services over the last 20 years have been seen as shadow IT. Now IT is taking ownership on security and authorization and personal data. With the no-code tools, like is it still shadow IT, like when business teams don't want to talk to IT teams, or now is it governed now?
Yeah, it's governed. It is the main difference between the shadow IT. The no-code is really a solution to reduce the shadow IT because, as you know, in a marketing team, for instance, if you need to create landing pages and the IT don't give any solutions for it, the guys are going to do it by themselves and perhaps in a way which is not compliant with the security of the company. So when you want to go no-code and if you are a large company, the first thing you have to do is really to define the governance and specifically securities, which kind of people can access to what kind of data and all those rules. So it's no-code is really the beginning of the end of the shadow IT. But keep in mind that the persons who are doing shadow IT are very good people to move to no-code. Most of the time, they are the persons who introduce those tools in the company, asking the CTOs to allow them to use those tools. You also have to know that all the no-code tools, most of the most famous no-code tools like Notion or Airtable are SOC 2 certified now, so they can really give all the security assessments that large companies are asking now, as Microsoft or Encore or all the other tools.
Yeah, so it seems like it was the IT department that was late and too long to respond. So business teams there were saying, "Okay, let's do the no code." But now it seems now they're able to govern it, so they can do it in a totally governed manner. We have a question about like the culture, the IT culture of the let's say makers or non-developers. Because, for example, let's take an example. A lot of people may use Bubble or Airtable without really understanding, what's access level authorization, access level management, and maybe what is the scope all and giving access to the whole database versus giving access to exactly what's needed for a third party up an application or a colleague or an employee or a user. Like how do you manage this? Let's say this culture, right? Even developer had issues to understand. But it must be even harder for non-developers.
Yeah, no, it's a very good question. First of all, let me say that it's not always coming from the people from the company who is asking for no-code tools. CTOs and tech guys also are pushing for no-code now because they understood that it's a good way to manage the backlog of the solutions they will never have time to do. So everyone is going to merge on this idea that no-code is really a solution. What you said is also very interesting because you need to train people. You need to find promoters of the no-code. You need to find the persons who are really early adopters of those tools, and you need to train people to learn how to use it and how to manage it. In France, we have a large company, SNCF, who developed more than 12,000 apps on Microsoft Power Platform. In 5 years, they have today 7,500 makers in the company who are trained to learn how to use the Power Platform. Out of 120,000 people, so it's roughly 8% of the company who is now trained on this. And they really manage it very well, because once the people are trained, once you prepare the data, and so they can access only the data they can use, you made a lot of a big part of what you need to do in terms of governance. So it's really possible. It will take time, because from people from my age, for instance, most of my friends only used Microsoft Office for 30 years, and they never used another tool, perhaps sometimes SAP or Salesforce, but it's very difficult for them to learn a new tool. It's totally different with the Generation Z or the young people working in a company today, because they can learn a tool very fast. They have 20 tools they are using on an everyday basis. So this agility, we really need to accompany this, because it's very important for them to be able to use the right tool for what they have to do.
Yeah, I understand. So last question, does it take longer or shorter to train a no-coder or a maker versus a junior software engineer?
Yes, totally. And this is where the big thing is. In our academy, Allegri Academy is the first pro no-code maker school in the world. We launched it a couple of months ago. And what we know today is that it's definitely possible to train someone from 6 months to 1 year to become a pro no-code maker, compared to 3 to 5 years to become a real dev. So it's definitely much more faster, and moreover, which is also very important to say, it's more inclusive. We have 35% of people who are women who are applying to our school. We have 50% of women in our school, and you have people who are coming from very different kind of area in reconversion from very different kind of jobs before. So it's really open, it's really much more easy, and they can create great tools in companies for a very fast return on investment.
Yeah, so it seems no code can scale because of the ability of people to learn really fast. It can be secured because these platforms are SOC 2 certified. It seems it can be governed by the IT department. So yeah, definitely. And just last thing, but you said there's 0.3% of developers in the world, right? And actually, someone said this is the exact same number of the water we can drink versus the water we can't drink. It's 0.3% of potable water, drinkable water. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I don't know why they shared that, but maybe there is a correlation.
Interesting comparison, but yes, it's crazy to know that in 2022, such a few people knows how to code. It's really a democratic problem, and today, because of no code, we can see emerging a lot of startups bootstrapped by people who have no tech competencies, and they can launch their company because of no code. So that's great, and it's very, very important to have those tools today to continue to innovate.
Yeah, perfect, Francis. Thank you very much. It was a great introduction on the topic, and now thank you very much for being with us, Francis. And now we will have Matt McClarty, right, about knowledge workers in the world unite, low code, no code, and the future of digital businesses. So the first talk was a great introduction. So Matt is Global Field CTO and VP at MuleSoft. Hello, Matt. How are you?
Eddie, what's up? Good to see you.
Good to see you. We have a panel right after with some API folks, but first, let's talk about knowledge workers of the world unite.
Yes, that's my big title here, and this is a brand new talk. That was a great segue from Francis's talk there, because I think he covered a lot in a very specific detail about what I want to talk about. And The only thing I'll say is I kind of went all in on this low code term. He was using no code. They can be sort of synonymous, right? But I want to talk big context here around what that talk was really about, which is to say, like, what's going on here? We in the API community, I think for a long time have been, promoting this idea of consumability and focusing on consumers. Well, now there's this whole new category of tooling, which kind of gets to that heart of how do we make digital components as consumable as possible. So that's what I want to talk about. I'm Matt McClarty. I'm at MuleSoft, Global Field CTO. I lead a group called the Digital Transformation Office, and I'm working on a daily basis with big organizations who are going through digital transformations. And, there's a lot of common patterns that we see. So this is it's a macro talk. I'm not going to get into specifics on tools or anything like that. So I'm just hoping you'll come along with me on this journey. So where I want to start is, if low code is the answer, what's the question? Right? Because I think in the tech field, we like to start with the tools, but maybe that's not always the best place to start. And, I think what I'm seeing, the reality I'm seeing, and I think the data bears it out in terms of companies that are out there, is, look, we all get that we're in this digital era now. Digital economy is running strong. There's hiccups, but the future of growth in business, so much of it is around digital opportunities, digital channels. And so, it can be anywhere from, hey, we want to be personalizing our customer experiences through data. We want to take advantage of machine learning and automating things and, using all this contextual information we have to just make things better and more optimized. We want to have new device channels. We want to be more data-driven, even in our decision making. And we have all these digital ecosystems that we can plug into and find new ways of making money, new business models. And all that's great, and everybody accepts that and understands that, but we kind of hit a wall. Like, there have been studies done showing that the vast majority of money being spent on digital transformation kind of runs up against, fits and starts and failures. And we have all these issues that we're dealing with, right? Developers, we just talked about that 0.3%, right? They're burning out. They're overwhelmed with demand. We heard about, Francis mentioned that CTOs and CIOs are saying, hey, we want no-code tools because, we can't keep up with the demand. As we build things, we layer on more technical debt. It becomes increasingly hard to pull pieces out, migrate things. Skills can be scarce. We still have this business IT dynamic. We were talking about the role of IT there. And all this architectural complexity means it just, when it should be getting easier for us to do stuff, it seems like it can be getting harder for us to do stuff. And, we go through these phases of, maybe we personally don't because we only live for so long, but in the business world, we have seen changes like this happen before. I have a whole other talk track on how we transitioned from the Industrial Revolution, transition from steam power to electrical power. But here I want to just kind of focus on how things are being built in the previous era of big business around mass manufacturing and distribution, right? If we look at the automotive industry kind of as our template, cars were invented and they were kind of built in a garage, and you'd have one person getting all the pieces, putting it all together, a real serious craftsperson who could build a car, and they would go out in 1890 or whatever it was, and here's the first Benz, I think, electric wagon or whatever it was called on the left. And it was really, to meet the demand of customers who were like, hey, we all want a car. We had the assembly line came out. And the assembly line was all about mass manufacturing and division of labor and being able to actually make automaking jobs the middle class job, the one of the most popular jobs that a person could have in the 20th century, right? I mean, hey, times change there too. But the point here is, in terms of meeting the scale needed for the potential of the mass manufacturing economy, we had to come up with new ways of work. We had to divide the work. We had to empower the masses to be part of building the products, right? And I don't think we're there yet when it comes to software, right? If we're only tapping 0.3% of the population to do the work, and all the growth and all of the opportunities in the digital space, there's a problem here. So there's a great book that was written in 2009 by W. Brian Arthur, who works at the Santa Fe Institute, where it's a whole institute focused on studying complexity, which is great. But it's a book that really studies this nature of technology and what is technology about. There's awesome stuff in there about breaking down and unpacking technology from natural phenomena being harnessed for a purpose and all this stuff. But one line stood out to me when I read it the first time, and I've been referencing it ever since, which is, we think about the division of labor and assembly line for manufacturing world. In the digital world, in the technological economy, it's all about modularity. It's all about finding the right level of modularity. And hey, it's API Days interface event here, right? We are all believers in modularity, and we have recognized how powerful it is to go API first and create business capabilities behind APIs, and how much that helps organizations scale. And that's my day job, is helping organizations do exactly that. There's another person who wrote something that wasn't as good. Okay, I wrote this article 7 years ago now in TechCrunch, where I got really excited because there was this open letter that was sent out with a bunch of co-signers talking about the need to make software engineering more accessible. And again, I referenced that quote, by the way, on the previous slide, but I was talking about modularity and how you need to have building blocks to as a starting point to come up with this new sort of digital economy. You need to have education and instructions around how to use those building blocks, and you need to have the tools that make it easy to harness those building blocks in building new solutions. And at that time, I was very much talking about APIs and saying, hey, everybody get on board with APIs. But you can actually generalize that concept, right? When we think about it, right now we're building APIs because we want to attract the right developers who have a need to build solutions. We want them to use our APIs to do that solution, or we want to help people find the right APIs to build their solutions. Those are the building blocks. But they don't have to be APIs, right? They could be other types of building blocks. There could be other types of consumers that can be builders in that space, right? And obviously, as I've said, APIs are a big look at the success stories we built around APIs. Look at the innovation that we've done with these building blocks. Look at this example of ordering a lift over a smart speaker, an Alexa. Oh, I may be triggering people's smart speakers, and how it's been built on top of APIs and AWS and APIs and Lyft, and then utilizing Google Maps and Stripe and Twilio, and then even running the whole infrastructure on AWS using APIs, right? We know how to do modularity when it comes to APIs, right? And from a division of labor perspective, we can look at this and say, yeah, we've divided up the work, right? We've actually created a scalable model where we can decouple the work that a consumer is doing and building their app that's going to appeal to an end user, and the work that happens behind the scenes to build the API product, or even build and run the platform where you've got all the API products running and API components running, right? We've done it. We've divided the work. The issue we have is we've divided it up amongst that 0.3%. We've divided it up amongst the developers. And if we're only drawing from such a narrow pool, we can just see where the bottlenecks are going to come into play. Now, I've got the stats here, which I've got sources for these, right? Talking about the 0.3%. I'm not going to do the mental math right now, but here's the reality. We've got those 26 million software developers, which even by the stat source that I think that was from IDC that had that number, even almost half of those are just sort of hobbyists and part-timers, right? The core full-time developers, it's an even much smaller number. But Gartner did work to say, okay, if we think about this category of knowledge workers, so people whose job just generally is involving using technology or using information as the core of their job, there's 1 billion of those, right? We've got like a 40-to-1 ratio happening here. It would be really nice if we could tap those billion to help supplement those 26 million, right? And I think when we start out talking about low code, this goes back to the starting of the presentation where I said, if this is the answer, what's the question? It's tempting to look at the tooling and say, this is going to get you faster to market. It's going to improve the productivity of your teams. It's going to create more predictability because, having constraints and around this, it's all good. But I think the main point of low code is really this bringing more people into the tent, right? We have a fundamental societal issue with shifting as we shift these economic eras, right? We have a big problem right now if we're bottlenecking on all the developers, if we're limiting the distribution of wealth. There's all different ways we can analyze it. But the bottom line is we need a way to get more people into the tent of building digital solutions. That to me is the big promise of low code, no code technology, right? Is that, yes, we've got people who know to use technology, but there's a lot of problems not just the scaling issue when you don't have those people as part of building the solutions. Now, there's a bit of a stereotype around low code, no code solutions, right? They've actually been around a long time. And if we look at the objections to them, I think it's fair to say a lot of the objections come from developers who are aware of all the power they can put into code-based solutions and the control level and the optimization you can use with code and the engineering discipline you can put around it to make things run well and the ownership issues. Like there's a lot of objections get thrown out by developers and they can be quite fair, right? Like there's your mileage may vary depending on the tooling that you're using. A lot of this stuff is historical though, like low code, no code tooling has evolved immensely. I mean, I think a lot of the reason we get these objections is a mistrust of the platforms and maybe a mistrust of people other than developers building digital stuff because things can go wrong because there have been disjointed shadow IT. So we have to take those objections seriously and think about what does a future look like that will help bring more people in the tent, but do it in a way that's not going to compromise the quality of the solutions. So I see these 4 areas as being fundamental to cracking the low code or the no code, right? Making it so that we actually get to that next level in our industry where we are inclusive of builders beyond coders. Number 1, you do have to have the high quality tools that are going to play nice with the practices we have around the rest of the distributed software world. Right? In other words, interoperability, being able to integrate easily, being very consumable by all personas. I think Francis did a great job of articulating some of the personas that he's encountering. There's a lot more even that we can get into. Anyone in the organization who might be able to contribute to building these digital solutions. And you want to have the operability levels at enterprise quality. So scalability, security, performance, all that stuff. Secondly, you need the knowledge workers who are going to be empowered to actually become builders. And that's a mindset shift too, right? You have to have people who are willing to do that, who are going to embrace the idea that they are now have some control over what they're going to build and use. And the developers have to be on board with it, right? The responsibilities, I think, for the hardcore developers will shift to being the experts in the room, to being the enablers of the knowledge workers, but also to really take care of those system level concerns that require the deeper engineering practices around creating the platform, managing the platform, looking at the dependencies and the linkages and interactions between all the components in there. There's always going to be enough work for IT. If anyone's worried that they're going to be no coded out of a job, like this, that's not a chance just because of the growth trajectory. And then finally, bringing this all together with a new operating model that allows you to balance out the different types of work that are going on and make everyone play nice. So this is my view of what's needed. I'm going to do a little illustration here. And this is sort of, there's like no code, low code is a huge category of tooling. So I'm going to take a very specific view of the world. And what I'm hoping to achieve, like if we look at that operating model in a little more detail, right? This is I admit this is idealistic. But if you think about developers and IT on one hand and the knowledge workers on the other hand, this is really about IT empowering the knowledge workers with the tools. In this case, I'm going to use a concept called composable connectors. This is something that, within MuleSoft and we in our methodology around helping organizations drive API-led connectivity. Our approach is to look at how we can provide low-code connectors that will allow non-developers, non-coders to go out and actually create connected workflows that allow them to do their jobs more easily. So that's my example of a low-code tooling, giving that to the knowledge workers, having them create those workflows, those automations, which then gets fed into the IT team and the developer team, who can then do analysis around that, find out, first of all, what do these people care about? What are they working on? And then really think about what can be, what else can be offered in that area, what can be optimized in that area, and then providing more optimized connectors back to the knowledge workers who can then, again, do their work. And we have line of sight in IT. So I think, I can picture this feedback loop or this virtuous circle where instead of it just being, requirements being thrown over the wall from business to IT, or in some cases, especially with knowledge workers who are out there on the front lines in the field, their channel to communicate their needs to IT today can be very convoluted and go through many different filters and create a broken telephone effect. So, this is just really direct communication. It's really kind of agile spirit here around how this can all work. So I'll use an example, and I brought up the automotive example early on. Imagine a automotive company who's got a dealer network, and in all of their different dealer instances, maybe they have their own CRM instances where they've got administrators in the dealership. They're the IT people on site, but they're not really full-blown coding IT. And then you've got their users who are the sales staff in the dealership. Imagine you were to offer them just some simple connectors like, here's a way to find out about inventory. Here's a way to find out about how to book services, services for vehicles. Here's a way to find out information on financing, right? That would allow these sales administrators to build some workflows that would help those sales staff go out and do things like confirm that you have a new vehicle on the lot, or find a new, initiate service for a new customer vehicle, or initiate financing, at the time that a customer wants to make the purchase, right? They could string together some workflow, make that dealership's life a lot easier. Things that used to require a lot of phone calls or conversations, they can automate that process. This is fairly straightforward, and we can see where we're actually connecting. We're actually using APIs in conjunction with these connectors, low-code connectors, to make that work. Well, over some time down the road, that's useful right out of the gate. But down the road, as IT gets in the loop and they start analyzing things, they can actually say, you know what? We noticed that those three services are being used in conjunction a lot. Maybe we can offer a process, an API and a process and an associated connector that makes it really easy for you to just complete a sale. And in that process, you would check the inventory, book the initial servicing, and confirm the financing all in one go. And then you're going to make it even easier for those sales CRM administrators to build workflows using that. That then opens up even more possibilities, right? That process might be reusable if you wanted to start selling cars online more, right? Something that I'm sure dealerships are very afraid of, but for the company could be very helpful if you wanted to open up a new channel there. Furthermore, you could find that, we noticed that in this process, the admin could say, that stuff was really useful that you gave me to build that workflow. But one thing that was missing is a lot of times people want to trade their vehicle in, and maybe there's a way we could get information about resale value through other third parties, and so maybe the IT team could build a connector there, which could be factored in. So the future I see is not so much that IT gets replaced and developers are put out of jobs because we've got these new cool no-code, low-code tools. I think that if we all accept that the landscape of companies when it comes to software and digital technologies is always going to be very complex, having more brain power, more unique skills being brought into the position of designing, building, executing the digital solutions is just it's the only way forward if we're going to scale things. And I think that the companies that are able to empower those knowledge workers, but do it in a way that still gets the most out of their true hardcore software engineering teams, are the ones who are going to find the right balance and succeed the most. So, it's a short session here. I'll have lots more to say on these topics and how it goes. But this is I think the bottom line coming out of this presentation is that it's an inevitability. We have to embrace more builders coming into the digital community. So for our API community, which is an awesome community, an open-minded community, I would say just be open-minded to these building blocks that we're going to see inherently. Be welcoming to a new community of digital builders, right? At the same time, you are technical experts as well. Be skeptical and vet the tooling that comes in, right? Make sure they continually are improved and live up to the quality standards that are required for enterprise technology. Consider what that operating model is going to look like in your companies or the companies that you work with. And I think that this idea of knowledge worker is a pretty broad brush, right? So I like the way Francis was articulating certain personas. I think there are going to be some pretty common ones that we see that we can start to figure out who the people are that are going to be the most effective builders, what are their roles, what are their skills, so we can build the tools for them. That's it. I'll stop sharing now so I can go back and see Mehdi.
Thank you, Matt. Just one question before the panel with some usual suspects of the API space. Just one question. So, MuleSoft has evangelized this really, core API, process APIs, experience APIs, and now we will have, let's say, probably no-code orchestration, triggering, whatever mixing tool, right? It seems we are able to enable more people on the closest to the customer, right? They're closer to the customer more than ever. Like experience APIs was really the end layer. Now it's even business citizen developers, right? And the other point is that in his book, Jeff Lawson, Ask Your Developers. He said developers are really creative minds, and creative persons can build applications that have a lot of value, but maybe the business is also about a lot of creative person who know really well the customer needs. And so if they're able to build the apps themselves, at least components, or it's a huge amount of value that can be liberated, right?
Completely. Just think about, and I think we all have agendas with the things that we write, right? We know we know the agenda of that book. It's a great book, but yes, there are a lot of creative developers. There are a lot of developers though who are very, very much engineers and optimizers, right? So it's not like the developer personality is always inherently creative. It's because there's a big population of developers who are creative because there's a big population of people who are creative. But think of all the creative people, to your point, that are not in the loop right now because they don't have that level of technical acumen. And I think that even not just focusing on just creativity, but even just knowing the business, right? Think about how much, if you put tools in the hands of people who are on the front lines executing things, the power there. Like we've always seen this in the API community, right? Where we could, as much as we may think we understand what's going on, you put an API out there and let people just play with it. There are always ideas that you never would have thought of that afterwards it's like total sense. Oh, of course, that's what they would want to use this for. Same thing here, right? You're going to reach a much bigger population.
So we were limiting creativity to developers because they were only one being able to build application. Now we will liberate total creativity because everybody will be able to generate value, right?
That's definitely the idea.
So I propose we liberate also the creativity of this discussion by inviting more people.
Yes.
For the panel.
Into
So
the tent.
Let's invite Mike and Irakli on stage. Hello, Mike. Hello, Irakli.
Hey.
There's a couple of creative people. Hey guys.
Yes, a couple of creative people there. Just also to say for people who will see the panel, we also asked some female potential speakers to attend. They were not available, so there. But just to we have this Women API program. We really tried, but let's say no one was available. At least in the people we tried to. But yes, we're really glad to have you, Irakli, Mike, Matt, and I. We also had invited Eric, also who is. Like the old API Academy members, right? At the time, we all wrote books together, right? So there's also one reason for us to all be there. So, yeah, I think the last time we were all in the same room was like five years.
Oh yeah.
4 years ago. So
I've lost all sense of time.
Yeah, too long. But yeah, so again, as I said, in Paris, we will invite you to be there. So we'll try to solve that issue. But for now, within the last time we met all together, it was like 4 or 5 years ago. What does have changed except our job positions?
What's changed? What's not changed?
Yeah,
in the
that's
last
a
4 or
shorter
5
list.
years.
Let's say in API space, at least in
Yeah.
in this industry, we're loving and fighting to see it continue in a good way, at least. What has that changed? Is the culture have changed really? Is it the peak, like the API economy we have been talking about over the last 15 years? Is it really coming now? Is it this year? So yeah.
I don't know. Well, I'll just volunteer that, to talk seriously about this. In the last several years, when I just look at this event and I look at other API Days events and other events around the globe, I see so much more talk about design, so much more talk about products, so much more talk about business, all in the same API, under the same API banner. To me, that's a big change. That's a cultural change. This track here, right, is talking about bringing more people under the tent, to use in Matt's example, to really think about who else can contribute in meaningful ways. And I think that's a big difference. And I think that's reflected in some of the training and some of the advice, and it's starting to get reflected in the tooling. I think tooling, as ever, is way behind, but that's what I see. I see a lot more business than I used to.
I see the
Irakli?
same.
Oh, sorry. No, please
No,
go ahead.
I'm just going to back up. I see the same. It could be personal bias, but based on who I'm talking to these days, but definitely, and seeing some good returns as well for companies who are down that curve. But yes, Irakli.
Well, I'm going to be a little bit more specific. And one of the things that I have seen, obviously there is significant switch over to more loosely coupled interfaces, right? So GraphQL is definitely a way bigger player than what, like 5 years ago, it was like all about REST. But also, I see a lot of move away from APIs. I see in my space, a lot of work is moving to data streams. So it's not all about the single vendor, but like Kafka has kind of become the de facto representation of the API streams, data streams. And honestly, a lot of things that we would do before with APIs are now done as Kafka streams. So Evro, Kafka, those things are replacing some areas where APIs would be seen traditionally.
But so you're saying that an event-based interaction is not an API?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying the way we express the interfaces has evolved, and it's not all about the RESTful APIs anymore.
Yeah, I definitely see there's a huge increase in people I talk to asking about experimenting with event-driven services and streaming services. And one of the things that keeps coming up is there's a lot more understanding about the passage of time. You know, when you do these streaming things, you realize things are always happening at some place, somewhere. You have to deal with the idea of concurrency and eventual consistency and all these other things that are much more abstract. And I think that's definitely a change as well. And I think that's one of the reasons, Irakli, you would know this more than I, because you're right there. Streams sort of force us to rethink the way the world works, right? Is that right? Do you think about it that way?
I do, because one of the things I think it represents is moving from client server, which is fundamental RESTful APIs, more into broadcast, right? So I publish something on a stream, that's a broadcast. That does change the nature of communication. So you're absolutely right. That's why I find it pretty interesting.
Cool.
Is it the story of software, like, from synchronous to asynchronous to synchronous again and asynchronous again, and also this monolith versus services versus monolith again versus services again and microservices again, right? So it seems like it's just a new era. We're going for 20 years of this, and in 20 years we will say, oh, we have this new technology that gathers everything, that makes polling so much more efficient, right? So, and asynchronous is to whatever, it will not happen like that.
I think so. I mean, I think I've tried to look at this because it's not like event driven is new, right? Like maybe Kafka's relatively new, and being able to do event streaming at a higher scale, more immediacy, that's obviously getting better and better. But I think, like, I always look at the integration world. There's these three interaction patterns: queries, where you're not changing state; commands, where you've got this coordination happening, where someone's saying, go change the state, I'll wait, let me know when it's done. And then the events, which are more post state change. And I don't think it's possible to model everything over events because of that. It's just that you start modeling those queries and commands over an event architecture. So I don't know. I'm still the opinion that you're going to need it all. And then it depends what you're optimizing for. I think one thing, though, specifically on event driven, is it's good. There's so much maturity and robustness around the metadata side of RESTful APIs. It's great to see async API kind of becoming more popular in the event driven space. But Irakli, in that sort of transformation you're seeing, like, are people going back to square one with Kafka, or are they embracing async API and kind of leveraging some of the goodness that could be transferred from our RESTful API world?
No, it is definitely about event-driven, and I don't think that synchronous is getting squeezed out. I think that synchronous is still very much something that you need for certain use cases. But another thing that I think is happening, or I see happening, is for the synchronous payloads, people are becoming more comfortable generally with like eventual consistency, asynchronous, stream-based in certain areas. And in the areas where you cannot be comfortable with it, things are getting really tight. So for the synchronous use cases, the budget for latency is getting smaller and smaller. So that's also very interesting to observe, because what that means that some of those intermediary solutions concepts like hybrid cloud, you can have some things running on-prem, some things running in the like public cloud, is becoming increasingly problematic, right? Because if you're trying to squeeze the execution of something in 100 milliseconds, and you're spending like 80 of that in interconnectivity of public cloud with private cloud, it's not going to end well.
Yeah, this I think we've talked about this before. Time suddenly becomes an architectural element in your design, right? Like, this is going to cost me time. This is going to be far away. This is going to take time to resolve. That's going to change the way I decide what technology to use. And I think one of the advantages of the newer breeds of event-driven systems is they're so much more effective and efficient with time. I think that's one of the reasons we're doing them more often. I know I've talked about this at API Days before, that we're going to eventually be leading into this autonomic space where it's not just autonomy, but systems sort of take care of themselves. We've taken a couple of runs at this, to use Matt's example of sort of cyclical. And I think when you're trying to keep an equilibrium, when you're trying to balance things, you need a short window of time for these events. Whether you're managing devices like temperature sensors or motion detectors or anything like that, or just trying to do trades on a market or just keep track of customer orders, you're going to have to kind of have a system that knows how to keep a balance and stay healthy on its own. That's totally event driven. Even if I do commands, sort of like, changing the way the system works, I'm going to have to wait for the feedback from all those events to figure out if it's right. So I think we're inevitably getting into that space, and time is of the essence so much more than it used to be.
And just for the I don't know if it's a fun story or not, but I was talking to an enterprise architect where we're talking about time and efficiency, and he said, and I was asking to him, like, what's your top performance about messaging, and where when you get communication, and he say, oh, we're the fastest possible, and I say, okay, what it is, like 10 milliseconds? Say, no, it's long. I say, one? I say, no, less than 1 millisecond, really, like 100 microseconds? Say, like, no. Say, like zero? He said, no, below that zero. Say, how do you do that?
Below zero.
Actually, they are provisioning potential next actions.
Yeah.
They are provisioning potential next actions, so it can be as fast as possible. They're caching it. So actually, we are below zero. We have the next action already provisioned in the app. So actually, even if there is an offline connection on whatever, so he tricked me at least on this one. But I agree with you.
No. It's predictability, right? They're making predictions now, and they're staging their predictions. It's like arbitrage. It's like, well, I'll be prepared for these 3 or 4 possibilities, and whichever one comes up, I've already got the package done for it, right? And that's optimization at a completely different level. That's actually how our brains work, right? We sort of predict what the other person's going to do. Like when two people are walking and they kind of bump into each other, lousy prediction, right? Oops, okay, they kind of do this. So this is getting into the computing space, and I love it.
I knew you were going to say that, Mike. I predicted it.
There you go. See, there you go.
Yeah, that's good. Let's say on the business side, just a few things. Many over the last 5 years, many regulations: open banking, open insurance, personal data like GDPR or CCPA, ColoPA, VCDPA in the US. Like now, Utah has a privacy regulation. We have the FIRE, the HIPAA, the whatever. All are pushing at some point APIs, right? Of APIs or API protocols. We have a lot of open source tooling. API management has been a commodity. Like it has changed a lot. Now, API security solutions are saying that API gateways are obsolete. A lot of things have changed. I will ask you, like, also on your side, did you see a mindset change also? Why I'm saying that is because at least in Europe, we have so many new API product managers who are junior. They are junior. They are just out of school. They are promoted API product manager, where 5-7 years ago, it was a 10 years old, let's say, in the industry, architects or product manager. Like it seems even the knowledge on APIs is a commodity, at least, even on the business side. Do you feel it?
Well, I was going to actually tee off on the security thing, which is that in spite of all that, the API security mindset is still, that's the thing that hasn't evolved nearly enough, right? Like we still see it, we can scream about it all day. Like, you got to protect things, and just, we still see breaches all the time. And I just, so maybe that's because we have too many junior product managers. I don't know, but I doubt it because it's been there forever.
I'll just say 2 things. I don't think we have enough regulation, and the regulations that we have aren't enforced. So this goes into AI and machine learning, as well as all the other kinds of prediction, which is evolving around security and everything else. So I think we're going to see more and more of that. In terms of mindset, I definitely see a new crop of people when I'm talking to companies. There are people who know a lot about product management, but not so much about APIs. But they're going to be in charge of an API catalog. They're going to be product managers of a suite of products. This is an entirely new set of skills, an entirely new set of people. And I definitely see much more of that when I visit companies than I did a few years ago. And I think that's an excellent trend. I think it's a fantastic trend, which brings us closer to creating the kinds of products and services that are really needed, that have a real business value, not just a technical success.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty pessimistic in this area. So I see a lot of performative things being done, and I think some of the regulations that just added the warnings about cookies, but basically you're giving up the same rights. You just need to now click on several pop-ups, but
Sure.
the result is the same. It's not really helping anybody, right? And this is not the only example. I think there are a lot of that get done in technology and all social problems that we have in our society today. There's a lot of performance, but very little real change. And I think in technology specifically, it cannot happen if technology companies themselves do not try to change things, right? If we're all about profits and today's gains, this won't change. Some law somewhere written by some lawyers,
Yeah.
not going to change. You must want to change, right? Even if it affects your short-term profits, because you have to be able to see the bigger picture. And I would like to believe that in the past, in the world, we used to have the leaders who were able to step up that way and do things like that. And we seem to be lacking those kind of leaders. And unless you genuinely are trying to change, somebody forcing you, yeah, some laws are necessary, but it will not lead to the genuine change, I'm afraid.
Yeah,
Maddie?
someone said earlier, it's the difference between to adapt to the API revolution, change, whatever, or to adopt the API mindset, right? To adapt to or to adopt, that's the difference. One is just like it's driven by the outside, one is driven in by the inside. So yeah, at least from APIs, we see so many new companies who are they claim 4,000, 5,000 APIs, even if sometimes they just endpoints, but they call them APIs at least. But but at least here we see the movement is there, right? It's like the peak oil, but I think we are the peak API, right? At least from what you see on API days, we have never seen so much API project, API people, and API jobs opening and stuff like that.
Definitely.
I was going to say, I think I agree with what Irakli said, but it's pretty fundamental societal barriers, right, to overcome to fight that dynamic. If there's a glimmer of hope, maybe it's that the freedom of choice that consumers may have as a result of all this stuff going on, perhaps I kind of think in a very heavily capitalistic economy and society that we're in, that consumer activism maybe is more powerful than any other type of activism. But just to go back to what Mike was saying about the product managers, I think one of those, and I know you guys, Mehdi and Mike, you wrote the book in continuous API management, talking about product management and saying one of the things is, hey, it's just product management. I think one of the things that comes out of these people with a product management background is, we like to talk about APIs as products, but actually it's more like they're products. They just happen to be API centered.
Yeah.
And Mike, you and I have the podcast where we talk to a lot of these startups in the API space. And it seems like it's not like they necessarily go into it saying, we're going to build an API product. They go in saying, we're going to build a product. Yeah. And it just happens that the API is kind of the core, but then they build all this other supplemental stuff around it. And so I think that we may be at peak API, Mehdi, but in terms of digital products, I think that there's still lots and lots of ceiling there.
Yep.
Yeah, but so many new investors are pushing this idea. We invest only in API products companies, or so now they seems like they've seen some successful companies, and now they're really the landscape we do on APIs. They ask specific explanation and stuff. It seems it seems at least we see a peak of the hype, but maybe it's the final plateau of productivity, right? The final plateau the hype was in the 2010s, right? The RPG, the mastery, whatever. Then we had the big how do they call it again?
The trough of disillusionment. Yeah.
The
trough.
And so finally it has been growing a little bit like that over and over.
Could be. I'm sure there's money chasing, tech, right? There's money chasing product all the time. And I think to go back to what Irakli was talking about, I think one of the challenges is just in the time I've been doing this kind of work, the cycle of how long I'll wait before, how patient I'll be as an investor. That's gotten shorter and shorter and shorter. And in the long run, I don't think that's good, right? I think what happens is we get to the point where we're just looking to turn a buck rather than make a change. And that can be really, really scary. So I think we definitely have to fight that. I don't know how, but I think that's another part of the story as well, which is what are the sustainable items that go over a long period of time? What are the changes that we're involved in, that all of us, listening here are involved in every single day, that are going to have a long-term effect? And those long-term effects, to me, are always more interesting and, to me, more important than the short-term effects.
Yeah, let's say, but at least Marshall van Alstein this morning, he made a great research on reverting the firm with APIs. He said that there's more value outside the company than inside.
Yeah.
So opening APIs, you will be able to collect more value, more channels, more whatever. So he said, yeah, and he showed that by the numbers, companies who have opened public APIs actively have been accumulating a lot more value. But the thing is, actually, it's the winners are on the long term. Facebook, Google, these companies have been run by the founders for a really long time. They were seeing the long term since the beginning, right? Stripe,
Right.
the founders are still there. So actually the winners are maybe the one who adopt the API mindset, but also who understand the long term, right? And
Yes.
it's like exponential. You get so much more value when you wait, right? And the more you wait, the more you get value. Shopify or Adobe or at the end, people who invested on a long time, I think, at the end, the winners.
Yeah, I think the sort of putting APIs aside, but they're a very great conduit into the digital ecosystem. I think the really understanding the value flow and kind of the value network ideas, and I know Marshall's done a lot of work in that area, kind of the original Christensen sort of thinking. There's some great work done by a couple guys in the Netherlands, value engineers. That's, to me, I've been working with companies using that type of approach of saying, like, where's your value? What value are you creating? What value are you distributing? What value are you capturing? And there's actually a company, I think, in Belgium that has a game they created around this. Like, they literally have a game board where you can have little value currencies. But that's when we talk about the API. Yeah.
So there's a sort of a monopoly of
Yes,
APIs
a
or
value
something?
exchange. A value exchange. Yeah, I gotta find it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
see
One of my colleagues at Jonathan Lanosina in Salesforce introduced this to me because I was describing. I said,
Cool.
thinking about maybe we should gamify this approach, and he said, "Well, have a look at this."
Cool.
So, yeah, I'll share the link on that afterwards. But like it's actually a massive strategy tool to say, okay, to your point, Mehdi, and to Marshall's talk, where's all the value out there? How can I capture it? What am I going to exchange to capture that value? How am I going to create more value from it? That's the game. I mean, APIs are just sort of a conduit in the game, but I think there's a lot to be done there. And I think just because of the immediacy of how quickly we can exchange information in the digital economy and how cheap it is if we're web connected, I think that's why we're in a totally different era of business.
So it seems like I took all of us in a little bit of a dark spot with my pessimism about social problems and our solutions to that. So I want to pivot from that. And one of the things I do genuinely believe about APIs, I really think we're at the inflection point, right? So the last 10 plus years have been, there's some magic about APIs. Let's API-fy everything. Just invented a new word, right? So let's make everything into APIs. So it was all about more APIs, the better. But now I think we're getting to the point where, we have a lot of APIs, right? And the consumer appetite for waiting, this value of time, like everything needs to be instantaneous, is really hitting us. So I think soon enough, we're going to start seeing some really interesting things about how we treat interfaces, right? I wouldn't even call them necessarily APIs anymore, where we really start to understand how modularization works, where you want to put things together versus where you want to put them separately, where you do want to actually do orchestration, where you want to put things like vertically integrated. So I think we are now at the point that we have seen enough APIs that we're starting to learn to be very efficient with them. We're not there yet, but I think some really, really interesting things will come out in the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, I definitely see that as well. A lot of the customers I'm talking to are asking me about the topic that comes up is composability, workflow, orchestration, choreography, however you want to talk about it. And I think we may have like a lot of bottled up or pent up demand in this space. And like you said, we could have some really creative breakout ideas that have a lot to do with how we actually can build new things with just the interfaces, is how we design on interfaces rather than just services. I think you're right.
So we have 1 minute to wrap up. If every one of us wants to take a last word about last word about the topic. Yeah, what we would like people to remember about the last 5 years and maybe the next 5.
Okay. Data is coming. The whole, everything that we've seen happen in the distributed application world, all the machine learning insights, analytics, there's going to be a tsunami of that coming into our API world. That's my future look.
I'll volunteer. I'll just repeat what I just said. I think it's all about composability. I think that reusability hasn't happened yet, and it's going to happen, and it'll be a major productivity kicker. It'll be great.
Yeah, I think the analogy with machine learning, data science is very apt, because just like in that space where there were like decades of people investing in, but nothing really happening, and then all that exploded because now you had the critical mass of knowledge. We've been investing in having everything turned into APIs for quite a number of years. And I think the time is coming when it will reach the critical mass where we will see fundamentally different uses of that inventory of APIs and the knowledge.
Cool.
Yeah, on my side, I would say broadcast everywhere and catch the streams. I would say, and I would say, yeah, I think that's the mindset, right? All channels is 360 degrees, like spheric even channels. Like don't reduce yourself to only what you can have, but like invest in people what they can receive, not only in what you can deliver.
Okay.
It was great to be with you again virtually, and again in Paris. We will do everything we can to have you all in the same place, right? So yeah, thank you very much, Mike, Irakli, Matt, for being with us and participate to Apidays Interface.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Mehdi.
Thank you very much.
See you guys.
And it's time to wrap up. Yeah, thank you very much. It was a great day one. I hope you enjoyed all the talks and discussions. We really went from let's say streams. We really went from the economics aspect with Martian van Alstein at the beginning, right? Deep research, then the state of the API industry, and then different streams, right? On the API business level, product, partnerships, platforms, ecosystems, and monetization, to finally end on the no-code and next generation of builders with APIs. On the tech part, we're talking about the new tech stack, API lifecycle management, developer experience, with a lot of roundtable and workshops. And tomorrow we'll talk about different parts, specific open API specifications, standards, GraphQL. We'll talk about also what's happening in the crypto world with APIs. So yeah, I invite you to join us tomorrow at 9 a.m. Pacific time. Yes, just to tell you, it will be streamed in like almost like a few 20 minutes, 30 minutes in Asia Pacific time zone, and in 8 hours in European time zone. So yeah, thank you very much for being with us, and see you tomorrow for the second part of the program. Enjoy.